Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Rusty Beauties Restorations, and in this episode we're gonna continue working on this overdrive situation here. Notice how I don't say A-type or J-type or whatever, because initially we started working on A-type and then we switched to a J-type overdrive. So for those of you who didn't watch the first episodes, I would recommend going and watching those first before you watch this one, and for the rest of you I'm just gonna do a quick recap of what has been done so far. So initially we had this A-type overdrive that was attached to this transmission, and we knew that it wasn't working. I mean, the overdrive wasn't working and the transmission was making some grinding noise as well. So the idea initially was to fix the A-type overdrive and also try and fix the transmission. However, when we took apart the A-type overdrive, it turned out that the planet gears and the planet gear carrier and the annulus here are badly damaged, and these parts are really hard to come by, or if you can get them, they are quite expensive. So we decided that we're gonna abandon this idea and we're gonna switch to a J-type overdrive, which is over there. So the J-type we also don't know much about, but we think that it works. We think that it's in a good shape, but in order to make sure, we need to assemble it with the transmission and test them. Of course, in the transmission we had a main shaft that was for the A-type overdrive that initially was on it. So now, in order to install a J-type on the transmission, we needed to purchase another main shaft, which is for J-type. So we have that over there. In the last video, we took apart the transmission so we can change the main shaft and also look after this grinding noise that we found. And we think that it was coming from this broken tooth on the countershaft, because it goes there. That's the only damage that we were able to find here. But we also ordered some parts and we got them. So we had some gaskets here. Oops, they were supposed to stay inside there, so they don't get damaged. Anyways, we have bearings here that we ordered, seals, new synchros, and all this good stuff that we're gonna change. Since we have everything taken apart, it's good to change them. Also, we got a used there you go, a used gear to replace this one, so hopefully it is the same tooth count and everything. And yeah, and we're gonna go from there. So without further ado, let's get crack-a-lacking. Alright, so before we start assembling, we need to make sure that our housing is clean, not only from debris and everything, but also from old gasket maker stuff, because you see, when they assembled it last time, they didn't even use gaskets, they used gasket maker, and now this gasket maker is all over the place. So I'm scraping it here with a blade and with this putty knife or whatever it is. I'm trying to scrape it, and you see what I'm getting here. This we have to get rid of for sure now, because if we leave it for later, we might have parts inside and this might end up inside, and it's gonna be too bad. So we're gonna clean it now, clean it from inside as well and everywhere. We'll make sure that there's absolutely none of this is left here. We're gonna clean the table even, and then we're gonna start assembling. Okay, it's perfectly clean inside, outside, and this side. I mean, probably a little bit of grease here and there, but that's not a big deal. It's important that we got rid of all the silicone or whatever gasket maker that was. So now we can start assembling. The first thing that goes in is our countershaft. So let's go to our secondary bench over there and take care of our countershaft so we can drop it inside. So this is our secondary bench, and actually I just finished filming a video about how a TR6 transmission works. So if you're not familiar with that, if you don't know what exactly the countershaft does, how direct gear works and everything, you can go and watch that video. I'm gonna put a link up there so you can see it. So first of all, let's get rid of our main shaft and input shaft, and let's take care of this countershaft. So in some transmissions, in GT6 and Spitfire, for example, transmissions, this countershaft is actually one piece. It is called lay gear, and it is one piece because all these gears here, they don't spin relative to each other. So they might as well be one single piece. But in this case, they are separate because I'm assuming you're able to change only one gear at a time. Like in this case, we have this tooth chipped here, and we can change only that. If this whole thing was one piece, then we had to change the whole entire thing, and it was gonna be very expensive. So we are lucky that this changes separately. So let's take them apart and inspect them, all of them. So these are all the parts of our countershaft, but not really, because we also have bearings here on this side and this side, and for different ear transmissions these bearings are different. So I'm gonna clean these and inspect them carefully, and we will see if anything else is damaged here. I'm pretty sure I inspected them already, but I want to make sure. So I'm gonna blow them with air. So like we said, this one has a chipped tooth, so we have another one. It's used, but hopefully it is in a good shape. Let's clean it first. Yeah, it appears to be in a good condition. No chipped teeth, nothing. So this one goes to the garbage. So next we can change the two bearings inside, and they have circlips on both sides. So we have to remove the circlips, which is gonna be a little bit tricky. So I put it on the vise here, which vise is not very secure. I'm gonna run a screw in it. Don't laugh at me. This vise is temporarily here. So I clamped it into the vise with, these are soft jaws, so don't judge. I'm not gonna damage it. And now we can try to remove the circlip from here. Okay, and now I'm gonna show you a trick here that, of course, now that I said about it, it's not gonna work. So now if we push this way to open it, you see this spins. So we need to hold it with something so it doesn't spin. And we can use a flat screwdriver, put just one corner inside the groove and hold it there. Then use it as support for a pick maybe, or a small screwdriver. And with the pick we can lift, we can take this out of the channel, maybe a small screwdriver too. And once it's out of the channel, with the other screwdriver from underneath, we can lift it up, you see? That's how we come out. So, I don't know if this bearing is bad, but I figured since we're here, it is worth replacing it. And we have these. We have two new ones from Moss Motors, part number 88848-645. But for different ears, these are different, so you need to make sure that you have the right ones. Let's see. Yep, fits perfectly. But before we fit it though, we're gonna put grease on it. Now for transmissions, I use this assembly glue, I guess it's called, by Loop Guard. So I'm just gonna dip the bearing there. Put some inside as well. The more the better. And now we can put our circlip back. To make sure it's in there, I spin it. And if it spins nicely, this means it's in its groove. Okay, and then we can do the same for the other side. the circlip, I don't know if you see it well, the cut is not perpendicular to the circle. It's like on 45 degrees, if we can talk about 45 degrees on a circle, but you know what I mean. So this edge is sharp, so this is the one that we can lift. We can't lift the other one. On the other side it was flipped. And and in this direction it's trickier for me. It was out and then it went back in. There you go. Now watch me shooting it across the garage. Well, this one is not bad either, but we're gonna replace it anyways. So this is what I was talking about. You see how the cut is not perpendicular, it's diagonal. So I'm gonna put it in, so I'm gonna put it reversed now to what it was, so it is easy for me next time, even though I'm hoping that I'll never disassemble this transmission again. And now we can assemble it. Before that, I want to show you something else though. This shaft, this is the spindle actually for the countershaft. They call this a spindle. It is hollow. It has a hole here inside that delivers the oil to here, to this hole. So it's important to make sure that there's nothing inside this channel. So we're gonna blow in it. Even though this is gonna come out later, I'm just gonna put it in for now temporarily. So we have the smallest gear here, then we have a bigger one, sleeve, and then the biggest one. They also, of course, they have orientation. So these two go against each other with the sleeve in the middle, like this. But this one comes against this one, and you have to make sure that the flat part, this one, comes and engages with this. You see, they match. If you flip this around, it won't match. You see, it goes. So this one goes in this orientation. Flat part towards the next one. We're gonna put some grease on the splines here. So now, like we said, the smallest one, and it goes with this part first, so we can have the flat part towards the other gear. There you go, all the way. And now you see this part of the shaft ends up inside. And the other one, then the sleeve, and then the last gear goes like this. There you go. And this is ready to go inside the transmission, but it has thrust washers on both sides. So we have thrust washers, a big one that comes on this side towards the big gear, and a small one for the other side. But again, I don't know what the condition of them is, but we ordered new ones and we have new ones here. So they have this tab on the back that fits into a groove in the transmission case. I'll show you that. But now we're gonna just put them here. Actually, put this on the gear side here. Leave them there. And it goes here. Okay. So now we are ready to drop this into the transmission. All right, so I hope now you can see, let's shine some light down there, like this. I hope you can see now, we have this groove and this groove where the tabs of the thrust washers need to fall. Now, of course, we have to pull out the spindle and drop the gear only. I have the thrust washers there with the grease. They're staying there. Okay, I'm gonna slide this one later. I'm gonna try the front one first. So I'm gonna take the spindle and I'm gonna push it through. Okay. So now I don't know if you saw, but I have the spindle halfway through. Now I want to make sure that the tab of this washer is in place, which I can't really see. Well, obviously it is, because if it isn't, if the tab isn't in place, I wouldn't have enough room there. But now I do have enough room for this washer to go there. So again, it goes with the brass part forward. So we can put it there, like this. Okay, the tab falls into the groove. And now I can push the spindle from the other side and play with the washer until the spindle goes through. I can actually do this. I can adjust the washer and push the spindle up. There you go. Okay, so the spindle is inside. It's gonna have to come out anyways, like I said, because this gear is on the way to put the input shaft later from here. So we're gonna need to drop it at the bottom of the housing, assemble our main shaft with the input shaft, and then raise it, which is gonna be really tricky, and only then we can put our spindle underneath. But that's gonna be later. For now, we need to measure the end play, because now you can see, I don't know if you can see it moving, but it has a little bit of play, which is normal. We need to have there 7 to 12 tau for this particular transmission. I think for later and early there's a difference. For TR6 I believe it's 7 to 12 tau. So I'm gonna try with, let's say 9 tau. We need to put it right there, and that's gonna be a tricky thing. Okay, so that's pretty, I think we got it right. That's pretty tight, but let's try another one. Let's try 10. So that's 10. 10 is actually tighter, but still good. Let's try 11. This is 11. That's super tight. Okay, so we have 10 tau end play here, which is perfect. It's between 7 and 12, so we're fine. So we're gonna leave the spindle in for now. We're not gonna remove it. We're gonna remove it when we start assembling the top end. So for now we're gonna put this to the side, and we're gonna start working on our main shaft. Well, actually, while we're still here, let's put our reverse gear as well. So that's how it goes, with the channel for the selector lever here towards the back. So we're gonna put some grease inside. So its shaft, it's important, it has a notch here on one side. This notch needs to stay outside, because this is where the locking plate comes, and you're gonna see that later. For now, just remember that this notch needs to be towards the back. So we're gonna put the shaft a little bit in, then we're gonna put the gear. We need to make sure that lever is inside the notch. There you go. So now the lever is moving this gear back and forth. So that's where we're gonna leave it for now. We're not gonna put that plate, or maybe we should. Okay, let's put it temporarily. Okay, so this is the reason why these two shafts have the notch, because this plate comes and locks them in place. There you go. It has countersink on one side because we have this type of screw here. And like I said, again, we're gonna have to take it apart. Oh, finally, the heater turned off. So we're gonna have to take it apart later. So we're not gonna tighten it, but just putting it there to keep everything in place. And that's it. For now, we can leave this to the side. I'm just gonna cover it so no debris go in. And we're gonna start assembling our main shaft. All right, so now we have to take this whole cluster apart. And the reason why we're taking it apart, like we mentioned before, is to install everything on this main shaft, which is for J-type overdrive, instead of this one, which is for A-type overdrive. I'm gonna take it away for now, and let's start taking away our parts. So first we're gonna take off our input shaft. Okay, it comes out with the ring. It has bearing inside. We're gonna keep it in for now. We're gonna replace it later. So we have one synchro hub here. So the synchro hub comes apart like this. Why are these stuck? Well, I'm assuming this is, yeah, I think this one is pretty worn, but we have new ones, and then we have the third gear, second, and whatever. But here we have a circlip again that we need to remove in order to remove the rest of the gears. So this circlip is even trickier than the other ones, but we're gonna figure it out. Okay, it's too early to be happy, because many times from this position I still manage to drop it down. You see, I told you. What the heck? Okay. Well, you know what? I'm gonna leave it for now. Yeah, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna go have dinner. All right, it's a day later, or actually two, I think. And let's see if we can, this time, what we can do about this. I got frustrated the other day and I just abandoned it. You know, sometimes you spend hours on something and you get more and more frustrated, and then you come the day after and you do it on the first try. I hope this is the case this time again. But it looks like it isn't. Ugh. Okay, I think now we are almost there. I should have ordered another one and just cut this one, you know, snap it. Whew. All right, finally came out. Okay, so now we can start taking apart our gears here. So we have our third gear, that's number 3. Ooh, that's not good. Number 3 has a bushing inside. This here is the bushing from number 2. There you go. So that's the bushing for number 3. This used to be the bushing for number 2. So that's our number 2. That's bad. Then this is our synchro hub for number 2 and number 1. So this comes together to have this spacer in between. And then we have our number 1, which comes out this way together with this bearing. So I'm gonna take them apart as well. Oh, and here in number 3 we also have this spacer or whatever it is called, and the bushing inside. Okay, let's take apart this as well. Okay, this is easier. Here again we have this spacer. This bearing should come relatively easy. There we go. So the bearing has another spacer on the other side, and then the first gear, like we said, comes out this way. And the bushing for first gear, and another spacer. And this is the shaft that now can go back to the A-type overdrive. We're gonna do some checks here. We're gonna have to inspect all these and see what else is damaged. We already know that this bushing is broken, which is actually a very common problem for these transmissions. So when we're overhauling them, we definitely should change this bushing. So we're gonna check everything, we're gonna inspect it, we're gonna clean it, and we're gonna start putting together everything. But let's take a look at the main shafts now that we have them all here. So this is the A-type that we just took out. We're not gonna use it, we're gonna need the J-type one. So this is the J-type. So you see that in this part up to here somewhere, they're exactly the same, because this is where our first gear goes, this is where this hub goes with the splines, this is where second and third go, and this is where the other hub goes into these splines. So in this part, the two shafts are exactly the same. This part is different because this is the part that goes inside the overdrive, and inside the overdrives, of course, they're different. And here, by the way, we have the non-overdrive main shaft. So you see again, in this part, it is exactly the same as these other two, but this part is different because it doesn't go into overdrive. First of all, it has the screws here for the speedo gear, and then the rest is just going through the extension of the transmission, and this is where the flange for the drive shaft goes. So you see the difference. Non-overdrive, J-type and A-type main shafts. So now this one and this one go away, and this is the one that we're gonna use. Let's see also what other parts we have here that we're gonna be replacing. So we have a new bearing for the input shaft, because remember when we were hearing those noises, the crunching noises in the transmission, I thought that this bearing might be bad. That's why I ordered a new one. So we're gonna replace this one anyways. And we also have this bearing for here, because again, when I heard those crunchy noises, wasn't sure, so I ordered this one as well. So that's good. We're gonna change these two. So these two go together. I'm gonna take them away. And we also have all these new synchro rings to replace these ones, because now that we are here, it's not worth putting the old ones back. I didn't know what the condition was, but it was a good idea to replace them anyway. So this is what we're gonna be changing. So this bushing up to transmission CF12500, I believe it was, this bushing was bronze. for transmissions after CF 12500, they made a steel one to upgrade, because this is a really common problem here, that this bushing snaps. So I guess this was our crunchy noise that we were hearing. Anyway, so this one is done, but it just happens that I have another one in my pocket, and this one is steel. So I'm not sure if we can use this one here or not. I'll have to see what the difference is between these two and see if I can use a steel one instead of the bronze or not. So give me a minute. Well, unfortunately we can't use this bushing for here, because this bushing has been used for transmissions up to 12,500 serial number, and this is from 12,501, so they upgraded them. However, they also upgraded the gear, so this bushing doesn't fit this gear. They make aftermarket steel bushings that are replacement for the brass bushings for the early transmissions, but the steel one for the late transmissions doesn't work with the early ones. Let me show you why. So this is the second gear from the transmission that this bushing came out of. If you look at the back here of the two, they are exactly the same, and even this bushing from here fits here as well perfectly, no problem. But something that we're gonna have to do for all the bushings now, we have to make sure that the bushing, when it is in, it sticks out 3 to 4 thou out of the gear. Like for example this one, if we put it here, we need to make sure that the bushing here has 3 to 4 thou play. When we compress the bushing between the two washers on the side and everything, the gear is not compressed as well. Even for these, like this is third, we need to make sure that there's 3 to 4 thou end play on each and every one. So if we put the steel bushing on this old gear, the one that's broken, you can see here that it protrudes a little bit. There are ways to measure how much, we're gonna go through that later, but it protrudes a little bit. If we put this bushing on our current gear, the one from this transmission, it doesn't protrude. It is actually probably 20 thou lower than where it should be. So unfortunately we can't use this bushing here, and you can see that because on this side the two gears look the same, but on this side you can clearly see that this one is shallower than this one is deeper. So we can't use this bushing with our gear. We need a new bushing for here. All right, so I think we found a solution to this problem. Like, I knew that most motors don't have this bushing. I was gonna order it if they had it, but it was back ordered, so that's why I didn't order it, hoping that this one was gonna be okay. Turns out it is not. So I called two local suppliers and they don't have it either. And finally I decided to pay a visit to Mr. Sheftash, and turns out that he has the bushing. Actually, he has it in this shape. It's an entire transmission. So apparently this is a TR3 transmission, but TR3s and TR4s, they are all with the brass bushing. So all TR2, TR3, TR4, 4A, 5 and 250, and early TR6 are with this bushing, and only the late TR6 comes with this bushing. So since this is a TR3 transmission, we should have the correct bushing here. I'm just hoping that it is in a good shape. However, I'm gonna need to take it out. So you see here there are many different things inside, but the bushing should be the same. Anyways, it's taken apart and bingo, we have the bushing, and it's in a pretty good shape. So the only question is whether it is gonna be worn or not. So now we have to measure here and make sure that it protrudes 3 to 4 thou out of here. That's gonna be tricky, but we're gonna have to do it. Well, we're gonna do that in the next video because this one is becoming too long. Well, how long is it? Wow, 35 minutes already. So we're gonna measure the end play of all three gears in the next video, and we're also gonna measure the total end play of the bushings on the shaft, but I'm gonna show you how we're gonna do that next time. So once again, guys, I want to thank you so much for watching, for subscribing, for commenting, and for supporting the channel on Patreon as well. There are also some people who donated money directly via PayPal or e-transfer, and that's also really appreciated, guys. So if you want to support the channel as well, so I can keep making those videos, you can do that by multiple ways. One of them is by subscribing, sharing, and all that good stuff. That's a big help. But if you want to support me financially as well, you can become a Patreon. You can follow the link in the description below, and that's going to take you to my Patreon page, and you can see there are 3 ways to support me. You can also send a one-time donation via PayPal or e-transfer to elin.yakov@rustybeauties.com. But again, you don't need to do that. You don't need to support me financially in order to have access to all my videos, because there's no such thing here as VIP content or early access or stuff like that. Supporting me financially is just a way to say thank you if you feel like it. If not, you're still a valued subscriber and follower of this channel, and I still appreciate everything that you do here for me. So with that said, guys, I'm gonna sign off, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.